The Midnight Express wasn't just a train. It was a rolling confession booth. I've spent 20 years as an investigator looking for the truth in dark rooms, but I never expected to find it in Cabin 7. The engine died somewhere in the snow-choked pines of the north, leaving me stuck in 6 square feet of velvet and shadow with a man who looked like he'd stolen the moon. He called himself Emmett. He had a briefcase he wouldn't let go of, and eyes that told a story I wasn't sure I was ready to read. My name is Silas, and I knew right then the storm outside was nothing compared to the one sitting across from me. The world doesn't end with a bang. It ends with the long, dying hiss of a steam valve. The Midnight Express was 3 hours north of the city when the iron heart of the engine finally gave out. One moment, the rhythmic clack-clack of the tracks was lulling me into a state of semi-consciousness. The next, there was a violent jolt that threw me forward in my seat. Then, silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the heavy, oppressive silence of a graveyard in midwinter. I spent 20 years as an investigator, mostly chasing men who didn't want to be found. I was looking forward to a quiet retirement, but looking at the man sitting across from me in Cabin 7, I realized the universe had one last case for me. He called himself Emmett. He had boarded at the last second, a blur of navy wool and frantic energy. He was younger than me by nearly 2 decades, with a jawline that could cut glass and eyes that seemed to be constantly searching for an exit. But it was the briefcase that caught my professional eye. He held it on his lap like it was made of thin porcelain, his knuckles white against the dark leather. "We aren't moving," Emmett whispered. His voice was melodic but strained, like a violin string stretched just a hair too tight. "Snow's too deep," I said, my voice sounding like gravel against the sudden quiet of the cabin. "Engine probably choked on the ice. We'll be here a while." I reached up and clicked the small brass lamp on the wall. It flickered, struggling against the cold, before bathing the 6-foot cabin in a warm amber glow. It made the space feel smaller, more intimate. Emmett didn't look at me. He looked at the window, where the rain was rapidly turning into jagged ice crystals. "I can't be here a while," he muttered, more to himself than to me. "I don't have a while." I leaned back, crossing my arms. "In my experience, son, when a man is in that much of a hurry, he's either running toward a wedding or away from a funeral. Which one is it?" Emmett finally looked at me. The amber light caught the blue of his eyes, and for a second I saw a flash of raw, unfiltered terror. "Neither," he said. "It's a heist, Silas. Or at least that's what they'll call it when they find out what's in this case." The lights on the train flickered once, twice, and then died completely. The cabin was plunged into a deep, oceanic blue, lit only by the moonlight reflecting off the snow outside. The temperature began to drop instantly. "You're an investigator," Emmett said into the dark. "It wasn't a question. I saw the way you looked at my shoes when I walked in. You saw the mud. You saw the scuff on the leather. Habit," I grunted. "Hard to turn off the brain after 20 years. "Then use that brain." He leaned forward, his face inches from mine in the shadows. I could smell the faint scent of cedar wood and the sharp tang of adrenaline on him. "There are men on this train, Silas. Men who aren't interested in a quiet retirement. They want what's in this case, and they don't care who they have to go through to get it." I felt the old spark, the one I thought I'd buried, ignite in my chest. I reached out in the dark, my hand finding his forearm. His skin was cold, but his pulse was racing under my touch. "Why tell me?" I asked, my voice dropping to a low rumble. "Because," breathed Emmett, his hand moving to cover mine, "I think you're the only man on this train who knows how to keep a secret. And because I don't want to be alone when they come for me." Outside in the corridor, I heard the heavy rhythmic thud of boots on the carpet. Someone was walking slowly, checking the numbers on the cabin doors. 12, 11, 10. I pulled Emmett closer, shielding him with my frame as I reached for the lock on the door.
The Midnight Express was no longer just a train, it was a trap, and the man in my arms was the only thing I was willing to fight for.
The footsteps outside cabin 7 didn't just stop, they lingered. A shadow blotted out the sliver of moonlight filtering through the frosted glass of the door. I felt Emmett's breath hitch against my neck, his body trembling with a rhythmic, fine-tuned terror. I didn't move. I kept my hand locked over his on the handle of that briefcase. "Stay quiet," I breathed, the words barely a vibration in the dark. The shadow outside shifted. A gloved hand brushed against the wood of the door, testing the lock. Then the footsteps moved on. 9, 8, 7. They were moving toward the dining car, but they'd be back. Men like that always come back for what they've lost. "They're gone," Emmett whispered, though he didn't pull away. In the cramped space of the sleeper sofa, his heat was the only thing keeping the freezing mountain air at bay. "For now," I said. I reached into the inner pocket of my overcoat and pulled out a silver flask. I unscrewed the cap and handed it to him. "Drink. It's not a heater, but it'll trick your blood for a minute." He took a long swig, the burn of the bourbon making him cough softly. When he handed it back, his fingers lingered against mine, a slow, deliberate contact that had nothing to do with the cold. "What's in the case, Emmett?" I asked. My voice was low, the Enceladus rumble echoing in the small space. If I'm going to put my life on the line for a stranger, I need to know if I'm protecting a saint or a sinner. Emmett let out a bitter, jagged laugh. "In this world, Silas, the difference is just a matter of who's holding the gun. It's data, proof that the men running the rail line are the same ones burning the towns down for the land. I didn't steal it for money. I stole it because it's the only truth left." He looked up at me, his eyes searching mine in the blue moonlight. "You're an investigator. You know what happens to the truth when it's inconvenient. It gets buried," I said, "usually with the man who found it." "Then let me be buried," he said, his voice dropping to a desperate velvet hush. "But don't let them take it. Please." He wasn't just asking for protection anymore. He was asking for witness. In 20 years of tracking shadows, I'd never seen a man look so beautiful and so broken at the same time. The investigator in me told me to stay objective. The man in me told that investigator to go to hell. I leaned in, the scent of cedarwood and bourbon filling my senses. "I told you before, Emmett, I don't leave people behind." I didn't give him a chance to answer. I closed the distance. The kiss was desperate, a collision of two people who expected the world to end before sunrise. It was the taste of salt, spirits, and a sudden fierce hope. His hands, finally letting go of the briefcase, tangled in the hair at the nape of my neck, pulling me closer as if he could hide inside my very skin. The train groaned, the metal complaining as the ice expanded. But inside cabin 7, the cold had vanished. "Silas," he breathed against my lips. "If they come back, let them," I growled, my hand sliding up to cup his jaw, my thumb tracing the line of his lip. "I told you before, Emmett, I don't leave people behind." The kiss had barely tasted of hope before the world lurched. It wasn't the smooth pull of an engine, it was a violent mechanical scream. The Midnight Express groaned as if the iron itself was being tortured. "We're moving," Emmett whispered, his hand tightening on my shoulder. I looked out the window. We weren't moving forward. The train was sliding backward, picking up speed as it retreated down the mountain grade. The air brakes hissed. Empty. They've decoupled the engine, I realized, the cold blood of an investigator returning. They're letting the sleeper cars roll back into the valley. They want to search us away from the main line, away from witnesses. I stood up, pulling Emmett with me. I grabbed the briefcase and shoved it into the waistband of my trousers, buttoning my heavy overcoat over it. "Silas, what are we doing?" "We're getting off," I said. "Now." I led him into the corridor. The man in the fedora was there, standing at the end of the hall, his hand reaching into his coat. I didn't give him the chance. I slammed my shoulder into the emergency exit at the end of the car. The door flew open, and the freezing night air hit us like a physical blow. The train was moving at 20 miles an hour, rolling through a ghost-white landscape of pine and ice. "Jump on 3," I yelled over the roar of the wind. "Aim for the drifts, Emmett. Don't look back." I saw the hesitation in his eyes, the fear of the unknown. I grabbed his hand, interlacing my fingers with his, the grip so tight it must have bruised. "I've got you. Look at me. Only me." He nodded, a sudden fierce resolve hardening his features. 1, 2, 3. We hit the snow together. It was a chaotic explosion of white and cold, a moment of weightlessness followed by the bone-jarring impact of the frozen earth. I rolled, tucking Emmett into my chest, acting as his shield one last time. When the world stopped spinning, the Midnight Express was a fading red light in the distance, a ghost ship disappearing into the dark. The silence of the forest was absolute. We lay there in a deep snowbank, gasping for air, our breath billowing like clouds of steam in the moonlight. I looked down. Emmett was staring at me, his face pale, a small cut on his cheek bleeding red against the white snow. He started to laugh, a low, breathless sound of pure adrenaline. "We're alive! You actually jumped!" "I told you," I said, pulling him up until our foreheads rested against each other. "I don't leave people behind." I reached into my coat and pulled out the briefcase. I handed it to him, but he didn't take it. Instead, he pushed it back toward my chest. "Keep it, Silas," he said, his voice steady for the first time. "The truth is safe with you. And as for me, I think I've spent enough time running alone. I'd rather be a ghost in the woods with you than a king in a city of lies." I looked at the briefcase, then at the man who had risked everything for it. I realized then that the retirement I'd been planning, the quiet house, the lonely walks, was gone, and I didn't regret it for a second. I took his hand, and together we turned our backs on the tracks. We walked into the shadows of the pines, two men with a heavy secret and a brand new world to build.
The Midnight Express has faded into the night, but Silas and Emmett's journey is just beginning. Stories like these, of truth, survival, and the love that found a way in the dark, are what we live for here. We are 200 subscribers away from our goal. If you want to see what happens when these two ghosts finally reach the coast, hit that subscribe button. My final question for you: Silas chose to jump into the unknown for a man he barely knew. Have you ever taken a leap of faith for someone? Was it worth the fall? Tell me your story in the comments. I'll see you in the next Chronicle.